Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
Sharan, I don't think we have run out of marketing topics such that you are now getting into the finance domain. What's with the topic for today?
We do host a podcast called Conversations on the Business of Brands, right?
Huh?
And what's business without numbers?
Fair. Okay. Yeah, I get that point. I agree that regardless of which stream you come from, if you are part of the business, you need to be on top of your numbers, and a part of that numbers is P&L. Okay, so that's fair. And therefore, what do you want to do today?
See, it's that surprisingly, and sometimes even sadly, a lot of startups get their unit P&L wrong at the beginning. And they don't realize how badly they've gotten it wrong until it's almost too late to correct. And I talk to a lot of these entrepreneurs, and they have different reasons to say they're doing well, but they do not know how much money they're making technically.
One of the reasons you could possibly attribute it to is the fact that not all startup owners or business owners are somebody who start off as finance whiz.
True.
Many of them are sales guys, many of them are operations guys, many of them are marketing guys, and they don't have access to finance professionals who could really, make them understand all of these specific and important terms. Maybe that could be one of the reasons.
In fact, that's one of the root causes for this problem. Because an accountant will come and tell you what's your spend, what's your income, and therefore how much money you're making. Kind of breaks it down at a broad level. It kind of ends up focusing on the overall business. And when entrepreneurs are going after growth, say they are willing to accept a certain amount of loss. And especially in the consumer brand business, this loss is not always recoverable at a later stage. So they need to understand this difference from saying, what is it I'm spending on the business to grow, and how much am I making by selling each product that I do?
There are nuances within the P&L which tells you that if you're making loss because you're incurring a lot of money under this head,
yes,
that is something which is controllable later. But there are a lot of heads which are not controllable. So you can't harbor any hope of making money. And therefore, I think the point that you're making is that one, bookkeeping is different from really building a healthy P&L, and understanding elements of your P&L so that you're able to get it in the right shape is something that startup owners and business owners should be interested in.
True. And my favorite I go back to is that these terms like LTV are really just notional, especially in the FMCG space, right? Because most categories are repertoire categories. Consumers consume different brands throughout time. So, for example, I was quoting this example to one of my clients. There are so many biscuit brands in India that if a consumer tried one new brand a week, they could go for almost 2 to 3 years without having to repeat a brand.
That's a good one. Yeah.
So consumers are not, because they've tried you, even if they like you, it doesn't mean they're just going to keep buying your brand. So the LTV becomes a little notional. It's kind of misplaced across different categories. And that is a big issue. And also something like ROAS. This is a conversation I've had a little too often. They say, what is a good ROAS? And there is no answer, right? Because ideally it should be infinity. If I don't spend money, I want my sales to go through the roof. Every little bit I spend, I want my business to be impacted infinitely. So there's no real right answer. So there is an entrepreneur who told me, I have improved my ROAS. Now I get 5 ROAS. And it's much better than my competition. But that still doesn't mean anything. Because it could mean that you're still losing money.
Yeah.
Because your P&L, your competition's P&L could be very different. And therefore, it really boils down to what your unit P&L is. And with that, are you able to make money?
Completely agree. And if you know your unit P&L, you can actually tell what ROAS works for you and what doesn't.
Exactly.
So finally, it's about bringing money into the company's coffers. I'm sure all of these terms serve some value or the other. But today's discussion specifically is about building a healthy business.
Yes.
Let's get to the specific point that you made about unit P&L, right? So can you please define it for our audience? What is unit P&L?
Simply put, it is the breaking down of your financials to the level of a single SKU, single piece, single unit of your SKU. So you can assess and plan your business growth profitably.
Okay. Fair. Sounds simple enough. I'm sure it isn't. Or maybe there is more layers to it. I would urge you to talk about more aspects of it.
Right.
But rather than just talking about it, why don't you maybe pull up an Excel and show it to our audience? What do you mean when you are explaining each element of the P&L?
Let's do one better.
Okay.
Let's do the unit P&L for your favorite healthy chocolate.
Okay, let's do that.
Let me know when my screen is up.
Yeah, I can see it now. Yes.
All right. Okay.
MRP 100.
Yeah. That's the first thing we start with, right? That's the basic. Let's start from there.
Okay.
Now, below MRP, you will have your retailer margin.
Yeah.
Let's say it's 10%.
Yeah. In chocolates, it used to be 12% the last I remember. Correct.
I'm not very good at math, so I'm going to keep it at 10% for calculation purposes. And so your retailer landed price. So what is the price the retailer is getting your product at?
RLP.
So,
okay.
Yeah. Retailer landed price will be 90. I'm doing a markdown. So say 90 rupees. So 10 rupees is the money the retailer makes every time he sells your product. Correct. Now you have your distributor.
So this is the markdown.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you look at it from a retailer margin on his landing,
right,
so he makes 11.1% otherwise.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to confuse. This is the problem when engineers get into marketing. Confusing all normal calculations.
I'm just catering to the nerds out there. Okay. Then there's a distributor margin. Okay. Now, yes.
Let's say the distributor margin is 5%. Now the distributor landed price will be what? That will be
85.7. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Now,
yeah.
This is the distributor's landed price. Now, distributor landed price is basically your gross revenue if you are billing directly to the distributor from the company.
Correct.
Now, usually sometimes there's a super stockist who then bills to the distributor, there's CFA.
Yeah.
Just keeping it simple here, assuming in a metro city, the company is billing to the distributor directly. So the gross revenue here is
same as distributor landing price.
Yes. After your gross revenue, comes your trade incentives that you do.
Correct. Schemes, incentives, trade loads, visibility spends, whatever you might want to call it. Yeah.
So that would be what? Say, for this example, would be 10 rupees. So this is what you're giving per unit to the, it could be to the distributor, it could be to the retailer. Basically, this covers everything that you will deduct as a credit note and not get back as cash after you made the billing.
Yeah, okay. So that will be your net revenue. One more bit. And so net revenue is 85.71 minus 10.
Yeah.
Right. Now, one more bit here. And for healthy chocolate, it might become relevant. And, especially when you're starting. If you expect some amount of returns, right? You push in a stock, you assure everybody that you will be able to sell, etc., etc. And suppose you say, okay, 5% of the stock will still come back. So that 5% also gets deducted here.
Yes. Your damaged stock, all of this gets deducted in this.
Yeah, because
let me change this.
Yeah, maybe
after incentives and deductions. I'll say incentives and deductions.
Yeah, and deduction. So therefore, when you're starting off, if you believe that you have a perishable stock and you are loading your outlets too much, account for some amount of deduction because that is going to reduce your SAP value or whatever you build to them. And hence, it will get deducted when you're calculating your net revenue. After net revenue is where your COGS or cost of goods sold comes in.
Right.
Now, cost of goods sold usually comprises of everything that goes into making of the stock, which is your raw material. Then there is PM, which is packaging material, the wrapper, the laminate, the cost of printing on the wrapper, everything bundled into one. Then you also talk about all the variable overheads, all kind of, factory expenses that they are going to account for your particular product. So if you are one product company, then entire cost of factory gets loaded here.
Hmm.
If you're a multi-product company, then the factory, the entire overheads of the factory are assigned to your product
Pro rata
depending
basis.
on the pro rata basis. How much of this product are you making in relative to other products that you're making in the same factory?
Right.
And if you are not making it on your own and you are purchasing it from a third party who is making it and selling it to you, then what you get from there is directly they have already taken account of COGS. Right. So, how much do you want to take COGS as, Sharan?
I want to keep it simple. I'm going to put it
25.71. I knew this. Okay.
So that's your
GM1.
GM1 is 50 rupees.
Yeah. So to the uninitiated, GM is gross margin.
Yeah.
So this is the first gross margin that people look at, gross margin 1, although it is still not money in your pocket. But this is something where you have covered the trade costs and the manufacturing cost broadly.
So this as a percentage would be how much? So this is equal to 50%
of my MRP.
Of net, no?
Of net, so it will be much more. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a 66% gross margin for the product. And this is pretty high. For every rupee that comes in, 66 rupees is what, 66 paise is what you make.
Yeah. So you're spending about 34 paise right now in your trade discounts, deductions, and your manufacturing cost.
Right.
Okay.
Now, that's not the only expense, right? Now, after this comes the biggest spend that we do, but if I'm going to keep it simple to start with.
ANSP. Yeah.
Is your advertising money. This is advertising and promotions budget, right?
Correct.
And you would spend whatever you do, your media money, how much you're investing in media, how much you're boosting on Facebook, how much you're spending on creating the assets, your film, your production of the film. All of that comes under advertising and promotions. So it even comes under even the consumer promotions. If you decide to give a spoon free with a jar, that also comes into your A&P expenses.
For brands which are B2B and you are spending on your channel. When you say channel, your intermediaries, the entire BTL cost also goes in here. So this covers all the ATL elements as well as all the BTL elements.
Absolutely.
What you've covered up are all the trade elements.
Right.
Yeah, in your incentives. So this is specifically spends that you do on your consumer or on the intermediaries to the consumer, which is not the trade. You can ideally say ATL spends, BTL spends. So that's how.
So this, I'm going to budget for now. Say 20 rupees of the 50 goes into A&P.
Yeah.
And half of that goes into BTL. And this will come to your gross margin 2. This is the money you have after your variable expenses for your sales and marketing spends.
Correct. Now, if you're a product who is going through, if you're a healthy chocolate, you can possibly assume that today your, ATL spend, for example, when you're advertising, there is a certain minimum spend that you have to do to make your advertising visible. Suppose that spend is about 15 crore when you're doing an all India plan.
Right.
Now that advertising spend does not care whether your today's sale is 1 crore or it is 1000 crore.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So therefore the advertising spend as a percentage of your overall sale will vary significantly.
Big time.
Right. So over a period of time, hopefully your advertising spend will not grow in the same proportion as your sales.
Exactly. So in fact, I remember an interview of Piyush Bansal where he said earlier, for every crore, every 5 crores of advertising we did, we had 1 crore of revenue.
Wow.
And now for every 1 crore of advertising we do, we have 5 crores of revenue.
Nice.
For Lenskart, obviously. This is what he said in an interview or something in the area. But that's exactly what happens when you continue spending on advertising and building your brand simultaneously.
Correct. So this might seem like an unnecessary expense or an expensive proposition to start with, but this is something which will hopefully help you build your brand and thereby keep your trade incentives in control over a period of time. You will not need to incentivize the trade so much because this will build in demand.
So gross margin 2 is not the end of it, right? There's more expenses after that.
So after this, you are going to get into your operational expenses. Yeah, operational expenses is whatever you are doing outside of your product to keep your company running, your offices, the staff, the admin, everything, your EHS expenses, all sorts of expenses, when apportioned over every sale that you do, every product that you make, that becomes your OPEX expense. This OPEX expense also gets deducted because this is finally a money out of your pocket.
Exactly. It's going out.
I want to keep it simple at 10.
Thanks for acknowledging my math skills. Now, this is your net income.
Yeah, this is GM3 or contribution margin.
Yeah, contribution margin, which is basically 10 rupees is what you make. If these were the numbers for Sudeep's healthy chocolate, for every 100 rupee of MRP value sold, the money you have in your pocket after expenses is 10 rupees, assuming these numbers are right.
Correct. So this is your net profit.
Yes.
This is the way of understanding how much money you are making every time you're selling a bar of healthy chocolate, considering the sort of expenses that you're making. So now that we've made 10 rupees, Sharan,
out of the 100 rupees of sale.
Out of the 100 rupees of sale, now would you revisit your initial comment about ROAS?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Because if you are doing a ROAS of 5, it means for every rupee you're spending, you're getting 5 rupees of sale value.
Yeah.
Right? So that means for 100 rupee MRP value of sale, you are spending 20 rupees in your advertising.
Correct.
So the budget we've kept is 20 rupees, bang on, assuming these are the margins.
So one of the ways of also thinking about it is if somebody asks us, how much can I spend more
right
over and above this 20 rupees so that I don't make losses?
Exactly.
Right.
But I'm going to push it a little on the other side.
Okay.
Now the retailer margin we've accounted for is 10%.
Yeah.
A new brand is unable to list on, say, an Amazon or other e-com platforms where they start, even modern trade, for anything less than 30% today. The moment I do 30%, it goes to, you lose 9 rupees, but the distributor margin is there. Now, let's say you manage to supply to them directly. There's no distributor margin. You are still losing 5.7 rupees for every 100 rupees of sale.
Correct.
While you're still saying your ROAS is 5.
Yeah.
You are losing money. How does that make sense to you?
Correct. And hence you would have to look at your ASP and BTL spends.
Exactly. So you will reduce these and you'll become more dependent on the platform. By giving them more margin, you'll be giving them more incentives and you will not be making any money.
Correct.
That is what will happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is this possibly this shape of this Excel sheet helps you realize whether you're actually making real money or not out of every transaction that you're doing in the channel that you have appointed.
Right.
Actually, nice. I didn't think that we'll be able to come up with such a sheet when we started discussing this, but I genuinely feel that this is useful, Sharan.
Yeah.
And, thank you for bringing this about. I think it gives a little bit of more clarity. It's a great refresher for me as well. But for everybody who is listening to us, it's a good way of helping them understand that where does marketing fit in all of this?
Right.
And finally, all of us are business leaders first and marketing leaders later, or marketeers later. And this is what we have to yearn for.
Your business is sustainable if you're making money.
Correct.
And unless you break down your business economics to a unit level, you do not know how much money you're making, or if with every sale you do, you end up losing money. And
correct.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put down explainers for this and link this sheet to the show notes so that people can take the sheet and even work out their own margins and see if it works out for them.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBcast.net.